ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today for what promises to be an invigorating and hopefully very stimulating webinar discussion that I am working with alongside my friends from KM2 Solutions. As many of you know, I am Peter Ryan. I am the Chief Analyst and the founder of Ryan Strategic Advisory. I'm based in Montreal, Quebec, and I'm really excited today to be talking with you alongside Marvin and Aaron about what's going on in terms of the nearshore as we're dealing with the pandemic period, and more interestingly, I think what's going to be coming out post-pandemic. So delighted to be here, really appreciate the opportunity to join you wherever you may be coming in from around the world, and I know that we've got a very global network of attendees today. But before we get into the meat and potatoes, I'll just ask my friends from KM2 Solutions very quickly to introduce themselves. Marvin, we'll start with you, please.
Well, good morning, everybody, and really great to be with you again, Peter, and good morning to my colleague, Aaron, as well. And, you know, I'm here with KM2 in St. Lucia, beautiful place. You can see a little bit of the background. It's the Castries Harbor, and it's a lovely sunny day out here today. And, you know, we've been running this operation here for over 15 years now, and I've had the pleasure of leading much of that. And, you know, we look forward to having a wonderful conversation with everyone today.
I absolutely agree with you, Marvin. I think it'll be a fantastic chat as we go through some of the key trends. Notwithstanding some of the trends, we know that there's a lot going on in the nearshore. And from one of the more exciting and more important elements of the nearshore, it's great to welcome you. Aaron, if you would just give yourself a quick introduction, please, as well.
Yeah, of course. Peter, sincerely appreciate you hosting this. And to all of you who have joined us, thanks for your time. My name is Aaron Davis. I've been with KM2 Solutions for just over 10 months now. I am the director for our programs and operation in Bogota, Colombia. I come from a background of international BPO work, spent an extensive amount of time in Mexico, several years in the Philippines, as well as in the United States, and absolutely look forward to having this conversation. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks a lot, Aaron. It's great to be with you. And it's great to be, as I said, with people who are literally joining us from all four corners of the globe today. Now, I don't think any discussion about the nearshore would be complete without setting the stage a little bit in terms of what is happening from the standpoint of trends that are being observed. Now, I decided that I would put together a few slides that would help perhaps encapsulate what some of the observations are that myself, other analysts, other influencers in the market, as well as players and enterprise buyers are seeing in regards to nearshore delivery into the United States. So I'm going to very quickly share my screen. Here we go. And we will take a look at just some of the key elements that I've tried to encapsulate over the course of the past few months, and some that I will be talking a little bit about in terms of where we're going to set up our discussion with Aaron and with Marvin. So just in terms of how we're going to aboard the different elements of this very, very informal presentation I'm planning on giving to you today or delivering to you. Realistically, one of the things that we've picked up in our research at Ryan Strategic Advisory is that American customer experience buyers, enterprise buyers, are looking to the nearshore in terms of partners that are operating in that region. There's a number of reasons why, in terms of what some of the elements that they're happy to recoup from the nearshore in that regard. The fact that it's relatively easy to get in and out of nearshore locations. The affordability element of the nearshore relative to what it would cost in terms of delivering onshore, or even in some of the offshore locations, they're becoming much more expensive. The quality of the skills and the quality of the workforce cannot be underestimated when you go across different nearshore locations. And that's, I know, a topic that we're going to be discussing in some detail today. And the reliability, the fact that it is a good, stable location from which to deliver customer experience, one in which there's been a tremendous amount of success. But the big question remains, what is going to be the impact on customer experience delivery, whether it's from the nearshore or other parts of the world going forward? And we'll talk a little bit about this. Now, putting the nearshore in the spotlight, when we're talking about the nearshore, and in the context of today's discussion, we're talking about Latin America, we're talking about the Caribbean. Let's talk a little bit about what's driving interest from the standpoint of American buyers. Now, I think there's a few things, and I talked a little bit about some of these in regards to the introduction I provided a few minutes ago, but I think it's better to go into a little bit of detail. Number one, there's proximity. You know, the reality is, and I'm sure that both Aaron and Marvin have found this too, there's a lot less patience that individuals have today in terms of traveling tremendous distances, great amounts of time over multiple time zones in order to get to a contact center facility. The nearshore provides a greater amount of accessibility, shorter flight times, limited amounts of any type of jet lag, limited amounts of climate change and many elements too. So it's much easier to deal with in that regard. The fact is that it's a lower cost operating environment than what you would find domestically in the United States as well. In many cases, the nearshore can save a tremendous amount of money in terms of being able to deliver great interactions, but at a price that's perhaps not what you would pay stateside. Now that just drives a great amount of value. And what also drives value are language skills. You know, one of the things that strikes me whenever I visit the nearshore is the fact that you can certainly get people with fantastic English, you can get people with fantastic Spanish, but you can also find a lot of locations that have bilingual labor where the both languages are spoken with ease and with fluency that you really have to see to believe. And I think that's something that's really struck me in visits I've taken to all sorts of different countries in terms of mother tongue and bilingualism. Very, very important in that regard, and certainly an element that I don't think that you find in many offshore locations. There's also the cultural empathy. Now think about it from the standpoint of the nearshore agent, who's very likely not just using the same products and services that they're supporting for an American consumer, but also the fact that they're watching the same television programs, the same films, they're listening to the same music, they might be tuning into the same television stations. All these things add up. And one of the things that really strikes me when you visit the nearshore is how, not just I would say culturally empathetic they are with the United States, but how aligned they are with the United States. And that adds through in every single interaction. You can't put a number on it, but it's just an X factor that you find across the nearshore. It's a proven business model as well. If you take a look at the nearshore's growth over the past 15, 20 years, the number of countries in which nearshore support is going on has expanded. And that's because of the fact that it's proven the value of investment. And the options, think about the options, think about the different locations where you can go to in the nearshore. It's a plethora of them. It's amazing to think about how countries that perhaps weren't even on the BPO map from a customer experience standpoint 10 years ago are now some of the hottest markets in the nearshore. So certainly a lot of reasons why American enterprise buyers are thinking that the nearshore is the way to go. And I want to talk a little bit about some research that Ryan Strategic Advisory undertook earlier this year. Every year we do an annual survey of contact center buyers. And what I decided to do was to break out the American responses in terms of what some of the key location criterion happen to be for American enterprise contact center managers based on what they told us. And we see some of the most important factors are listed here in the graphic in terms of the importance of the reliability of the power supply, the scalability of the labor force, the quality of the language skills that are applicable to the United States, English and Spanish, the fact that they expect an outsourcer or their own captive operations to be in a location that's got a stable and a pro-business regulatory regime, and close proximity to the geographic headquarters of the enterprise itself. So certainly I think when we're talking about what American buyers are looking for and what outsourcers are looking to provide, the nearshore ticks the boxes. So just to wrap up before we get into our panel discussion with Marvin and with Aaron, just a few thoughts. I think that clearly there is a tremendous amount of value that can be delivered from the nearshore. The region has a tremendous, I think, established track record in a number of different areas in terms of quality, making sure that whether it's voice or non-voice interactions, they're done to a very high standard, and making sure that any outsourcer and the enterprises that are working with the outsourcer are able to recoup some significant cost savings. So driving that value is key. Now, I think that the closeness of the proximity is going to be very important to the United States once we come out of this post-pandemic period and we all start traveling again. This is a global industry, but the ability to recoup the closeness of the nearshore relative to far-flung offshore locations is certainly a nearshore advantage. And this is why enterprises that are looking to work with a BPO partner in the nearshore, they need to look to one that has experience in the region, whether it's Latin America or the Caribbean, and that possesses what I would say is a diversified footprint, not concentrated in one single location, but concentrated perhaps in a few different locations, have a number of locations in order to ensure that business continuity is in place, that we know is so important and that we've learned over the course of the past several months. So I'm going to stop talking here in terms of my sharing, and we're going to go back to our panel, to Aaron and to Marvin, who are veterans and who truly understand the dynamics of the nearshore. And we're going to start opening it up to what I'd like to, I don't want this to be a panel discussion. I see this as more of a fireside chat. And I'm very conscious, guys, that where you are, it might not necessarily be the right temperature for a fireside chat. You might end up finding that a little bit warm, but we'll try and keep this as cordial as possible. Nobody's in the hot seat today. So I want to kick off a little bit with a question that I think is perhaps a good starting point for our discussion. Maybe, Marvin, kicking it off with you, could you talk a little bit about how you see the contact center industry in the nearshore by your own experience, how it's been impacted over the past several months by the COVID-19 pandemic?
So, certainly the impact in the region and in the nearshore space has been similar to most of the world. Obviously, there's been the health side of things. And one of the things that's not to be forgotten is that you still have employees. And while you're considering your business operations and how to keep that going, you also have to consider what you do with your own employees who are facing the similar risk, the similar challenge, the similar nervousness about contracting a virus. And I think, in large measure, the industry has done well to balance both. I think certainly in our case at KM2 Solutions, we made it very clear from the very beginning that we were going to try to find a balance. We were going to strike that balance between the health and safety of our people, because that obviously is our key resource, but then how do we maintain business continuity? And I think the big impact has been that people have had to adapt, and people have had to be creative and inventive, and have had to deploy solutions and do them very quickly. I think for the most part, people in the region, in the nearshore space, have had to very quickly pivot into work from home options. And I think in large measure, that has kept the industry afloat, that has kept the doors open, the lights on, and have kept people engaged. And then on the other thing, I think that what you have certainly now and post the pandemic is, business continuity and disaster planning and recovery are likely to take a more central seat at the strategic table. I think everybody has these things somewhere, but to the extent that you now have to make them front and center of your planning and your execution, I think that's going to be one significant change.
Thanks for that, Marvin. And before I pass over to Aaron, I just wanted to mention to everybody, and I'm sorry I should have done this at the outset, this is going to be an interactive session, so we absolutely want to hear your questions. We would love you to submit any queries that you might have. Now, you can do so by going to the bottom of your screen. You'll see that there's a Q&A button, a Q&A function. So if you have any questions, we would truly welcome you to type them in, and we will collect them. In the last 10 minutes or so of our chat today, we'll take those on and we'll give you the best answers that we can possibly give. So please, if you have any questions, fire away. Now, Aaron, I'm going to open the floor to you. And I think that Marvin made a number of really good points in terms of the industry adapting. And one of the things that I've picked up on over the course of the past several months, well, not even myself, I think it's been a fairly global trend, the shift to work at home. And that has been, I think, not just a shift, but it's been really moving from one side of the brain to the other. It's really been a challenge for a lot of organizations that perhaps were not doing virtual working. I'm curious, Aaron, from your perspective and what you've seen in Bogota and in Colombia, how has the labor force at KM2 Solutions adapted to moving out of the contact center and moving into delivering customer experience from where they live?
Yeah. I do think that Marvin made key points. We now have approximately 50% of our overall operations working from home across all of our enterprise. And this was a case of adversity triggering growth. We were forced to very urgently respond to what is fundamentally a people organization. We are our employees. And so addressing their health concerns and ensuring that we were able to both provide a fundamental infrastructure that allowed them to guarantee continuity of their jobs, provide our clients with the reassurance that we would continue to be able to support them, required that we made very rapid changes in deploying people to work from home. What we've done since then is try to take our original plan of always having a globally consistent operating model and driving really common key behaviors to ensure that we were able to execute well to mature the process that we have working from home. It meant making investments and changes in how we trained and onboarded people. It meant responding to changes in our clients' offerings. So economic changes impacted volumes both up and down, and that required us to adjust to headcount and overall hours of operation. It required retraining and upskilling of employees as we were adapting the both client programs and our own ability to do the work. And so after deploying very quickly, we really went through a continuous improvement process of how to support the employees well, whether it was in the onboarding or in the overall operational execution.
Great stuff. And Aaron, I think you raised an interesting point about the willingness of the employees to adapt and to be able to deliver 110% in what I think we can all agree have been very, very precipitous circumstances. And I'm going to refer to a study that was done by Fifth Talent that came out not long ago. Now, Fifth Talent surveyed a very large number of contact center employees across several different countries. What they found was that there was a belief that they were actually performing better from their residences, that they were actually being more productive and they were able to accomplish more. I'd be curious, Marvin, if I throw it back to you, what has been your observations about the shift to work from home in terms of how the agents have reacted, not just from a morale standpoint, but also from a productivity standpoint?
You're absolutely right. So the thing we found initially was that people were thrilled. They were excited. Mm-hmm. I think both with the clients that allowed us to do so, and kudos obviously to the client services teams and all of the people who work with clients to make the regulatory and compliance adjustments so we could do this. For the most part, we found that our employees were very thrilled about the opportunity to, as Aaron said, remain engaged, but to do so in a safe environment. And so it was a huge win for the organization to be able to do so. So the morale obviously was very high during that period. In fact, we surveyed our employees internally and we found very similar results to what the survey that you quoted found. And then on the other side is the productivity. I think just about everyone going into this likely had a little bit of nervousness, if you're honest, about how is this you're dealing with, in some cases, clients that are in the health insurance and health space. You have clients that are in the financial services space. And so there certainly was a degree of nervousness about how this whole thing would work out. But we have been, if we're honest, pleasantly surprised. And I think clients have been thrilled that the results have been as solid as they've been. I think, we must concede that there is some challenge that difficult to overcome on the productivity side. The at-home internet is never going to be as reliable as in the office. People are going to have power outages. People are going to have things in their neighborhoods that cause them to not be able to work at times that they would have not had an issue at the office. But those things aside, and which have been minimal, I think clients have looked at the results and have been thrilled. So much so, I'd say, Peter, that not only have we used this to get through this period, we've actually onboarded new clients directly to a work from home model. So similar to to some of the points that Aaron was speaking about, we've been able to sign new clients, do training, onboard, and optimize all of that, and train these people directly to a work from home environment. And if you rewind a couple of months, if you had asked us if this was something we did or we could have done, probably very few in the space were doing so. And to have matured the process from not just we need to do this to get through this period into the sort of robust and mature process that we can now onboard a client directly to home and have the sort of results that we've had, I think is telling of how nearshore and the market has responded in general, and then certainly as a company, KM2 Solutions, what we've been able to do in that time.
Really, really good response, Marvin. I do appreciate it. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. The questions are coming in fast and furious on the Q&A button, so please keep them coming. We're getting some really, really interesting queries that we're going to take up towards the end of our discussion today. But Aaron, I want to pick up on something Marvin mentioned in terms of the ability of the nearshore to adapt. And I want to steer it away for a second away from COVID-19, if we could, and talk a little bit more about the whole concept of the nearshore versus the offshore. And Aaron, I know that you're a veteran in this industry. You've been a long time industry participant. And one of the things that I've observed over the course of the past few years is there's significant less willingness amongst enterprise buyers, amongst executives from enterprises, to spend 17, 18 hours traveling to the Philippines, or to spend 18 hours traveling to South Africa, potentially to visit a site. They much prefer the opportunity of coming to a location like a Colombia or a St. Lucia or anywhere else in the nearshore, that they're able to recoup great quality services relative to some of the distances they otherwise might have had to go. Maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the feedback you're picking up from the enterprise executives, from the clients you're dealing with, just in terms of what their thought process is relative to the nearshore versus the offshore.
Sure. So this business is very much about partnership and engagement between vendor and provider. We have tremendous opportunities to add value to our clients' work when we can have very immediate interactions and we have a deep understanding of what their objectives are, so that we can add to what they're trying to achieve in gathering information from their customers, in gathering information from our front line. And those interactions are greatly facilitated by face-to-face conversations. I spent several years in the Philippines, and they've done a phenomenal job as a country of building up the infrastructure to work overnight in support of North American hours. But the truth is, there's just no comparison between the flight time and the layovers to get there versus jumping on a 4-hour flight from Houston to be at any one of our locations working in the same time zone. It allows for much more productive visits, the opportunities around cultural affinity and the communication with the teams. I mean, we've touched on, and how do our employees acquire language? What is it that they are doing when they are providing support for US-based customers? Those interactions are all enhanced by working very closely together. And I think there's great advantage to being able to really within a day send somebody that may be less experienced international travel to one of our locations that's very close by, very easy to get back and forth in less time than it would take you to get from New York to Los Angeles.
Yeah,
now,
and I think that's a great comparison, yeah.
I mean, one of the things I was going to say too is, we're nestled in a valley at 8,000 feet up in, the tip of South America, but, there's certainly something to be said for traveling to a beautiful Caribbean island as well.
Yeah, and Marvin, that's really a good point to pick up on. From the standpoint of the team, your site, could you speak a little bit to the extent to which you find that there is that cultural empathy or alignment between local residents and consumers in the United States?
Certainly. And, just to jump back a little bit to what Aaron was saying. So, I can't tell you how many times we've hosted a client visit where someone arrived on a Monday afternoon, got to the office, did a couple meetings, came back in the morning, did some more meetings, and was back in the US in time for dinner. Because you're talking a 3-hour flight to Miami, a 4-hour flight for most of the places on the East Coast. And you just really cannot put a value on that in terms of coming in and kicking the tires and meeting the people and being able to do that multiple times, perhaps in the space of a quarter, and sometimes even in a month. So that certainly has been something I think that we've benefited from, and so on. And Peter, could you just remind me of the question again?
Yeah, I was just curious about your team and what you observe in terms of the cultural alignment that they have in regards to being, and how that helps them servicing American consumers.
So it goes both ways, right? The consumption that we have in terms of media and television and the products that we consume, the services that we see, the things that we typically enjoy in this part of the world is largely driven by North America. But the opposite is also true in that there is such a high degree of travel to this region. The biggest tourist source market for most of the islands in the Caribbean, and certainly likely so for Latin America as well, is North America. And so because of that very strong cultural exchange, you find that there is that empathy, as you put it, there's that proximity, there's that affinity that takes place where an agent understands the norms and understands the customs and understands commerce and understands business and has a pretty good natural sense, a day one sense of what the job looks like, what the type of work looks like, and how to connect with a US consumer in a way that is natural. It's not something that you're force-fed. It's not something that we necessarily have to cover in a trading class. It's something that people come in already having a good sense of what it would be like interacting with someone in the US.
Great stuff. Now, Aaron, I want to start talking competition here in competitive environment. As long as I've been a member of this industry, working as a market analyst since the early 2000s, I don't think I've seen a period in contact center services or customer experience management that is as competitive as we're seeing it right now. We're seeing all sorts of different elements, new functions being brought to the table, expectations of enterprise clients are higher than ever. Consolidation is a real issue in the sector right now. What do you feel are the competitive advantages that KM2 is bringing to the table currently?
We've been very strategic about where we're located. And one of the things that I'm very proud of with the organization is that we have representation in very diverse markets. So the idea that I'm sitting here in a city of 11.5 million people with over 100,000 BPO employees in the various different organizations to a place where we're a major employer in the islands and really we've managed to become the employer of choice. The ability within our organization to drive consistency of performance, work really well with one another to ensure that there's a consistent experience across those different markets allows us to take advantage of the unique elements of each of those different areas. So whether it's developing talent internally and becoming an employer of choice or drawing from existing experienced talent here, we are able to take that and then apply it towards our clients' work, which in many cases, most cases I would say, we are providing support from more than one location. It brings a diversity of experience to the table and a diversity of skill to the table that we are able to apply towards a common objective.
Great stuff, interesting. Marvin, please go ahead.
Yeah, if I could just weigh in here. I think one of the other things, I like to say, one of our great tricks as a company is regardless of the size of your company, regardless of the size of the operation you have with us, it will feel to you like you are the most important thing in our world. The way we structure our organization from top to bottom, the way we manage an account, the way we do performance management, the way we conduct, whether it's a QBR or MBR, how we go about business is to make sure that that client's business is the most important thing. And you would see that filtered through every level of the organization from our CEO, David Crease, all the way down, that it matters. If it matters to the client, if the KPI matters to the client, if that result matters to the client, if that project matters to the client, if that initiative matters to the client, then it matters to us.
Great stuff. I appreciate that. Both very, very, I think, very succinct and very informative answers. So, guys, we're going to wrap up our discussion, our fireside chat now, and we're going to start answering a few questions that have come in, and we've got several that I'm very excited to jump all over. But before we do, in 30 seconds, I'll start with you, Aaron. Can you tell me how you see the nearshore is going to evolve in the next 6 to 12 months, assuming that we're going into the post-pandemic period?
Yeah, I think I mentioned previously, this is a case of a diversity triggering growth, and we've been forced to very quickly mature our work from home offering. It's also allowed us to really focus on our on-site offering, what is most important, what infrastructure is necessary, from information security policy to physical security policy. How do we run the operations with these multiple different types of support available. And I think what has made this industry successful in the past is effective partnerships between client and provider. I think that the opportunity for us to moving forward is to ensure that that becomes the centerpiece of any growth, that there is very transparent communication so that we can drive engagement and alignment with our employees, really identify, as Marvin put out, what is most important to our clients, and then execute on that with the very flexible offerings that we've been able to develop over the course of the past 6 months.
Great stuff. Thanks, Aaron. And Marvin, over to you.
Yeah, I think, business continuity and geographical redundancy are going to become and remain hot topics. I think every client is going to have that at the forefront of their minds, as we've seen stay-at-home orders and islands and countries getting shut down and so on. Organizations that have that geographical redundancy and ability to move things from one place to the next, I think that's going to be at play. I think there's going to be an interest in using technology and finding ways to keep things going where we can't have live bodies. But I would say that the technology that is really going to win the day is technology that supports the value add. As the world is in this complex place it is, there's still going to be a premium for highly skilled agents who can help people navigate very difficult things, whether it's a cancellation of a vacation, or booking a new one, or getting a refund, or not being able to make a payment, or trying to make a payment. As people are dealing with these complex things, you are going to need highly skilled agents to do that, and technology that supports that, I think, will certainly help to win the day.
Great, thanks a lot, Marvin.
Go ahead. If I may, I won't be able to forgive myself if I don't go back and make the point that one of the things that this has done for us is it's made us much more agile. We've had the opportunity to mature these various different forms of doing the work, and it will allow us moving forward to be much more responsive to our clients' needs because we have this broader, diverse offering that we can bring to the table.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. And I'm going to ask you to stick around for a second because I'm going to go to our first question that comes to us from Carlos, who's curious a little bit about what some of the challenges that you might see in regards to the management of security of information, credit card details, social security numbers, and anything else in that regard, understanding that people are very concerned about it. How do you address this in the context of both the nearshore and work from home?
Yeah, so multiple different things. I mean, obviously, the programs that we deployed to work from home, we made sure we limited the scope of information they were managing. There are technologies that can be brought to the table that ensure that you aren't capturing and storing that data. There are obviously the ongoing need to train and ensure that everybody is part of an information security program. It's not about a policy, it's not what's written on the table, it's about the culture that you bring to the table, and does everybody understand the impact of maintaining the processes in place to ensure that the data is confidential. So I think it's a combination of robust protocols, key technology deployments, and then very intelligent use of what do you deploy versus what do you maintain on site.
Right.
Got it. Thank you very much. Marvin, did you want to chime in there?
No, I would just that last piece that, at the end of the day, you still have to be selective. Everything can't go to work from home simply because of the risks that I think Carlos brought up.
Okay, well, Marvin, stick around for a sec because I've got a question that I think would be very interested to be handled by you. Now, Michelle is asking, have the educational leaders in the nearshore countries worked through with the contact center sectors in order to assure there's enough competent talent within the labor pools? And if yes, can you talk a little bit about how that's come about? And specifically in the Caribbean, is the labor pool large enough for growth potential as more and more companies want to work with BPO providers in locations such as your own?
So I'd take the second one first. I think yes, and to some extent, no. It really depends on where you are. You have Jamaica, obviously, where you have thousands of agents and you have a much larger population that can obviously support more. And I can't speak to the degree to which there is room for further growth. I would imagine there is some. And then you have some of the other islands, which might be a little bit more on the saturated side, if I'm being honest. And so you have to sort of, measure out what is that true capacity that that island can support. And some measure of it has to come down to the type of work you're bringing. If you're looking for, take an island like Barbados, if you're looking for 400 people to do really highly skilled, complex financial services, that might be different than if you're looking for people who are doing, more back office processing stuff. So I'd say it really depends. And to the first question, I'm afraid I'm going to give a little bit of a yes and a no answer again, in that on the one hand, the Caribbean generally has a very well-respected and mature educational process and educational system. It's modeled after British educational models. You have very high literacy rates, you have very high skill rates, and you have, obviously, because of the high volume of tourists, you have that natural training ground for services that happens in the Caribbean. So there's that. I think some governments have done better than others in laying out these training programs and working with the BPO sector to prepare people for entrance into the market. And others obviously could do a little bit more in terms of engaging with providers so that people are coming into training on day one a little bit more prepared than they might have if they came directly from school or directly off the street.
Good stuff. Thank you very much, Marvin. Aaron, I'm going to throw it back to you. Greg is asking, what does a work from home strategy look like for KM Squared going into the post-pandemic period when you're allowed to bring labor back into the offices, when the talent's allowed to come back into the contact centers? Do you have any thoughts about how that might look?
What I think is very interesting about it is that there's potential for us to do hybrid models. We can adapt to the needs of the program, depending on its complexity, to ensure that we are setting the employees up for success. So we can look at options that span the spectrum from entirely virtual trainings and onboarding process to an onboarding period where we are able to put more hands-on support in place before an employee is deployed, give them the opportunity to build up some tenure and comfort with the materials. And then, of course, we will always have a brick and mortar presence where programs will run on site. I think that the opportunity for us is to really tailor the solution to the needs of the program, depending on its complexity, depending on the tool system, anything that needs to be addressed. We now have within our infrastructure the ability to provide that.
Great. And Marvin, really, when we're talking a little bit about what the individual clients are going to be looking for, there'll be a lot of different influences in terms of company culture or client company culture, the vertical that they happen to be playing in, the requirements and the compliance around that. Certainly, it's going to be something that's going to need to be done on very much, I would say, not necessarily a formulaic basis, but very much on a customized basis. Would you agree?
Yeah, this cannot be a one-size-fits-all. You really are going to have to work with each individual client to determine what works for them, what does not work, where do they have the technology to take care of some of the security concerns and so on. I think one of the other things that will change for us, we've had to do work from home, not unlike any other company. We've had to do work from home as a necessity somewhat. I think as we exit the pandemic, and hopefully that is very soon, we are probably going to be a little bit more stringent on who we deploy and what we deploy. So as to take care of some of the things I mentioned earlier, some of the productivity challenges you may have because someone is working from home in an environment that you probably would not accept in a non-pandemic scenario. And then the other thing I'd say is, as an organization, we will be driven by this in terms of how we come out on the other side, largely by the medical science. We're not going to put our people in harm's way. We've been very clear about that from the very beginning. What is going to drive the day is, when do these local governments, based on conditions on the ground, tell us that it is safe to bring back more of our employees into the offices? And that's always going to be some variable that weighs into that, that discussion as well.
Great, thank you very much, Marvin. So we're coming to our time limit, but I'm going to take one more question before we finish up, because I think this is a very good one. And Aaron, I'll throw it back to you, and Marvin, I'll come back for your comments as well. Matt would like to know, in terms of data security and integrity as it relates to work from home agents and having customer information in an unmonitored environment, what steps has KM Squared taken to reassure clients that specific customer data and information remains safe and secure?
Yeah, again, I think this starts with very selective partnership on what we deploy from home. We want to make sure that we aren't exposing ourselves or our clients to significant risk by putting the wrong things outside of a very controlled environment. There are technologies in place that will allow us to do things like mask private information. And so it isn't captured, it's typed into the system, but the agent can't even see it. You couldn't capture it in the screen image. That type of thing is pervasively available and something that we have implemented. The other piece of it, though, again, the primary thought here is you don't send something offsite that you really can't have a reasonable assurance that you aren't going to put at significant risk.
Great. Marvin, any thoughts from your side on this? What's, I think, a very hot topic right now, and understandably so?
No, it's about managed risk, right? You cannot completely eliminate the risk regardless of how much technology you have. You're going to lessen it to some degree. But I think Aaron is right that you can deploy technologies that will certainly help. Masking, in cases where you're taking payment information, you can send people back out to a system, whether it's an IVR or a website where they do the payment directly and the agent has no involvement with that. So there are things like that we can do. And the other part is, a culture of compliance, a culture of information security. And if you build that in all of your training, if you build that in all of your programs, and you put in place, as we have, a very strong audit presence so that we're constantly reviewing and listening and watching for these things, then you certainly reduce the risk of something untoward happening at a large scale or a significant scale before you can potentially find it. You can't just deploy people out and say good luck. You have to have the mechanisms in place to check and to audit and inspect.
Thank you very much. Well, look, we are at the time limit. So I wanted to thank both you gentlemen for your insights, for your wisdom, and quite frankly, for your frankness today, because I think that's greatly appreciated, especially as we're going through some fairly unprecedented times in regards to how customer experience is being managed. But before we go, I'll just start with you, Aaron, and just let you say any last words that you might have in regards to the moving forward with the nearshore and from where KM2 is going.
Yeah, I think it's a tremendously exciting time to be a part of this industry because we've been forced to evolve. We have been very focused on ensuring that we are building up the infrastructure necessary to support our employees and really drive the idea that we have an infrastructure in place that is focused on keeping them safe and healthy, that we have an infrastructure in place that is going to guarantee the continuity of the work, and they know that they can rely on having these jobs. We've shown our clients that we can be very responsive to changes, and we've built up our maturity and capability in making those rapid adjustments. And I think that positions us very well to take a look at increased complexity, to take a look at a lot of different variable options moving forward that potentially didn't exist within our infrastructure 6 months ago.
Thanks very much, Aaron. Marvin, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, well, it was great to have this conversation with everyone. So certainly appreciate everybody joining today. Stay safe. We hope to be on the other side of this very soon. Yeah. But Aaron's point, this great significant challenge that the world faces has also presented a significant opportunity. And, so we're doing our best to meet those opportunities. And I think one of the things that certainly stands out to me that I'm most proud of as an organization is that we've not lost sight of our employees in all of the transitions and all of the things we've tried to do. And so for, customers in the US that are looking for customer experience partners, that are looking for back office processing companies, they're looking for companies that understand their business, will be agile and responsive to their business, but also is going to be engaging with their staff and take care of people, then I think we do an excellent job of being right at the nexus of those two things.
Great stuff. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. And I think that you both made some outstanding points in your final words. And I would just like to reiterate, I hope everybody who took the time out of their day to join us today will stay safe and stay healthy. We will come through the other end of this at some point. And when we do, I look forward to meeting both you gentlemen face to face so that we can catch up in a perhaps Bogota, perhaps in St. Lucia, you never know.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks very much.
Appreciate it. To everybody online, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Take care. Bye-bye.